Psalm 74, a maskil of Asaph. Now this is the same as last week. We also had Asaph as the author. And this one here, like Debbie had said, this is a dark psalm. And there is a lot of darkness in this psalm. But it also has light. So I titled it, All is Wrong and God is Silent. Now this psalm really has a way of looking at things. See, last time it was like, I need your help, God, and it just seems like you're not helping me in the way I want. And here is where I need your help, God, and it's silent. I'm not hearing anything from you. It's just like nothing. We listen and we're expecting answers and we're hearing nothing. That silence which weighs on us like, God, where are you at? I mean, I know you're there, but it's been a long time and I'm not hearing from you. And everything is going downhill more and more and more, and I'm hearing nothing. And what's interesting in this psalm is talking about leadership in the country and the problems that are happening. When Asaph was, his time period is with David and Solomon, and where the enemies are destroying everything, and that never happened during David and Solomon. So it's like everything you are saying here doesn't fit in the history in which you lived. Now, there's a lot of commentators that go by and just try to put him in different time periods. But he shows up as being one of David's musicians, lead musicians. So that part doesn't make a whole lot of sense that you'd have to put him into a different time period. So then you got to figure out, okay, what is he talking about? Because you're living in a time in which everything is going right and God is very present, and you're talking about everything's gone wrong and God's not present. It just doesn't fit. I think this psalm, and this is my own just personal opinion, was written more for us than for them. Because this psalm fits perfectly in the times we're living in. See, Scripture has a purpose, and its purpose is always contemporary. But it's contemporary in every time. So there was something that we don't understand about that time that made sense, and we don't know. It doesn't matter. But we do know the time we are in here and now. And that does matter. So we can look at this psalm and say, yeah, I can look out into this world that we live in and this nation that we live in, and I can see everything fits perfectly with this psalm. So in verse 1, oh God, why have you rejected us forever? Why does your anger smoke against the sheep of your pasture? And it's here starts off with, you rejected us? I can't really fathom that, because you don't reject your people. And your anger against the sheep of your pasture, it's against your people. Okay, it's not that your anger is against those that are outside. It is those who are part of the family of God. That seems strange, but that's what seems to be going on. See, it's in these silent times when we feel as though God isn't there, like he's abandoned us. So he must be angry at us for a reason. Our minds naturally go there. Okay, if things aren't going well, if we're having problems, it must be my fault, because it can't be God's fault. So when I am good, things go good. When I am bad, things go bad, and our minds automatically go there, even though we know that's not true. Because it's not. If God dealt with us according to our sins, it would always be bad. There could be no good. But God has promised us that everything works together for for our good. So when things are going bad, it's for our good. That's a hard lesson to learn, because our minds go to that point of, okay, I got a problem. It's just like Job's friends. Well, it must be I've got some sin that I got to deal with in order to get this problem to go away. That's not how God deals with his people. He never has. He never will. And that's where this psalm, I think, is very helpful for us to understand and learn that truth. So in verse 2a, remember your congregation, which you have purchased of old. Now, your congregation, here again, the people of God, your people, which you have purchased of old. Now, we go way back, and this is right at the time of the fall of mankind. And there in Genesis 3:21, the Lord made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. Now, this is the first blood sacrifice that took place. Right after Adam and Eve had sinned by eating the forbidden fruit, and then they realized that they were naked, and they made clothes out of fig leaves, God gave them a better set of animal skins. Well, in order to have the animal skins, the animal had to die. There's not going to be a whole lot of animals that are going to survive being skinned. Okay, just not part of it. So he gives them this, but there's a whole bunch of symbolism in there. Number one, it's a blood sacrifice, okay, which is pointing towards that ultimate sacrifice of Jesus. And then on top of it, it's clothing, okay, which does the effect of covering. The sin is there. God provides a covering over the sin. So it's covered. Eventually, it brings itself up to that blood sacrifice when Jesus came and was sacrificed. And that is when it's all taken away. But in the Old Testament, it's there, but it's looking forward to what will happen. So then you have, from Genesis, now we're going to go to Revelation and see the next step. And they sang a new song saying, worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. Now this is the other end of the spectrum. We started off at the fall in Genesis, shortly after creation. Now we're going all the way to the point of where the new heaven, the new earth, and that time period of glory, where time is either no more or doesn't have any meaning. We're now entered eternity. You purchased for God, you, Jesus, you purchased for the Father, and you purchased it with your blood. You were slain. So here again, the ultimate of the blood sacrifice that started off in Genesis. And this is how it brings your congregation purchased of old. So it goes all the way back to the beginning. God set aside a people. Verse 2b, which you have redeemed to be the tribe of your inheritance, and this Mount Zion where you have dwelt. In Galatians 3:13, Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law, having become a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. Redeemed, okay? Redeemed is an interesting word because it means to get back what already was, okay? You have something, you lose it, you go through the effort to get it back, you redeemed it. There's a story of a young boy who had built a boat, and he took it out to the lake and he put it in the water. A breeze came up and it blew it away, and he couldn't get it back. Years later, he's back in his hometown visiting for whatever, and goes into the little shop, and there in the window is his boat. Somebody had found it. Somehow or another, it ended up in this little shop. He goes inside and he tells the story about how when he was a little boy, he built this boat. And the shopkeeper is impressed, but the shopkeeper also isn't going to give it to him. and says, well, you may have your boat back for this amount of money. So he, no choice, he buys his boat. He redeemed his boat. See, we belonged to God. The fall took us away from this. But then Jesus came and redeemed us. See, we were his. We were lost, and now we're his again. Romans 8:30. And those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also... But look at that. Predestined, called, justified, glorified. There's a whole series of things. Predestined, God had established a destination for us before we even knew it. Then he called us. And when we were called, then we became justified. Justified, made right with God. Okay? And when we were made right with God, we were glorified. This is the steps of a Christian. All of it goes back to the credit for every step along the way goes to God. You'll say, well, no, I chose him. No, he chose you, and then you chose him, but you even did it in your free will. That's the amazing thing. But if you look at this series of steps, we go from being sinners to being glorified. That's all part of this process that's going along when he redeemed us for his inheritance. In Psalm 2b, verses 3 and 4. Turn your footsteps towards the perpetual ruins. Now we start going downhill and we start looking at the dark side in this psalm. Right? Asaph is saying, turn and look at these perpetual ruins. Now, perpetual means continuing on and on and on. Okay? The perpetual ruins that we are dealing with in our time and in our place is generational. If you notice, there is a pattern. This pattern has been going on for years. You have godly parents raising up their children. Their children are a little less godly. And their children are a little less godly. And theirs are a little less godly to get to the point to where they're not godly at all anymore. It's gone. That's a generational thing that's been going on for a long time. These are perpetual ruins, but ruins that are real. It has nothing to do with a building. It has to do with lives and souls. And it needs to turn. So the psalmist is saying, turn your footsteps towards this. Turn this around so that these perpetual ruins start growing back into the family of faith. The enemy has damaged everything within the sanctuary. All of the things that took place in the house of God are being destroyed. You were talking a little bit this morning about something they put up on the River Church big cross. You know, the evil that's put up there. Okay? This fits exactly what it's talking about. The enemy has damaged everything within the sanctuary. In the church itself, on the cross, somebody comes along and does something to desecrate it. People are willing to do that these days. It used to not be so. There used to be a fear. That fear is going away. In verse 4, your adversaries have roared in the midst of your meeting place, and they have set up their own standards for signs. Now, standards can mean two different things. Standards can be like a flag. Okay, that's a standard. But behind the flag as a standard is a meaning. Standard can also mean a series of standards that are required for this group, this organization, this family, or whatever. These are standards. Okay, it's kind of a set of unwritten rules that our certain expectations are. So you can take and you can use both of them. Both definitions fit here. Your adversaries have roared in the midst of your meeting place. They have set their own standards for signs. It's no longer the standards of the church. It's no longer the standards of God. It's no longer the signs and symbols that are there. It is their own. It's no longer what's supposed to be, what God has established. It's what man establishes instead. So it's man's standards. Well, man's standards have no logic. We can tell that with what's going on in our world. There is such total idiocy in the standards that are out there because they don't fit with each other. You can't have this standard and then carry that through. I'll give you a prime example. I heard somebody talking about that they knew somebody or whatever, that they considered themselves, they identified as a cat, right? A cat. Okay. So anyway, we've heard stranger things. So it's strange things we hear. But anyway, so I'm thinking about this. Now, if somebody comes along and kills this person who identifies as a cat, are they charged with murder of a human being or are they charged with animal cruelty? Which is it?
Human being, but that's
I understand. In reality, it's going to be a human being, but now you've denied that person their identity. Okay? So, right. So you're stuck in this quandrum. See, this is the idiocy of the world. See, evil cannot stand truth. Okay, that's a fact. Evil cannot stand truth. But the thing is, it can't even, in our world today, man's standards, logic has to be thrown out the window. Because you cannot have a set of standards that is logical and is evil. See, only God's standards are logical and good. Man's standards never are. Not only are they bad, they're also not logical. Kind of interesting. We don't think of it that way, but it is. That is true. Think of any of man's standards that are out there, the evil, and they're not logical. Remember back when, at least where I grew up, our church doors were never locked. It just wasn't done. Okay, I know we've talked about it before, and Bobby, you talked about the fact that in Memphis. So of course, that was a big city, so it's a different than a small town that I grew up in. But there was a genuine fear of God that if I go break into a church, something bad is going to happen to me, and God is going to see me. So it's a universal acknowledgement of the existence of God. So a universal fear of that God, even though it's not necessarily going to follow that God. But there were certain things that people simply would not do. And breaking into a church was one of them, or stealing from a church, or this just simply wasn't done. And because there was that fear. That fear is all gone now. Okay, even here where we are at, in a pretty safe neighborhood, we still lock the church when we're not here, because there are a few out there that who knows what, but that would be willing to come in and do either, more than likely here, would do damage, as opposed to actually steal anything, because let's face it, most of the stuff in here doesn't got a whole lot of value. It works well for us, and it works well for the kingdom, so that's what matters. But so, like I said, these things are changing, and this psalm, I think, points to so many of these things in our time that it is so relevant for our time. Verse 5, it seems that if one had lifted up his axe in a forest of trees. He's talking about, see, back in the Old Testament, you had either the tabernacle or the temple. The way it was constructed, there was a lot of really nice artwork in it. It was. And he's talking about that they come in there and they just destroy, they just chop it up. Just like they're out in the forest and chopping down trees, they're coming into the house of God and just destroying the beauty. Now, destroying the beauty for us is different. Because like I just said, we don't have a whole lot of things of material value here, but the beauty is our service to our God. And the enemy is trying to destroy that, to chop down our service to our God, to chop down our ability to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. That's what the enemy is working on, trying to destroy these things. And now, verse 6, and now all its carved work they smash with hatchets and hammers. But they're not satisfied with just destroying the symbols. Now they have to come further. In verse 7, and they burned your sanctuary to the ground. They have defiled your dwelling place of your name. They said in their hearts, let us completely subdue them. And they have burned all the meeting places of God in the land. Now that is talking about total destruction. And this does not fit into Asaph's time, because that didn't happen in his time. It did later on. But this is the path in which we are living in today. There are many places in the world where the churches are the ones who are being attacked. We hear from David in his home country, to where any areas in which there are predominantly Christians, the military is literally destroying houses and churches. In many parts of this world, in China it is happening. They're destroying churches by the thousands. And this is happening all over this globe. Now, that's not happening so much here yet, but those days could come. But that's a building. The one thing that none of them are destroying is the true church. The temple of God, us. That cannot be destroyed. They might try to destroy the buildings. They might try to destroy the meeting places. But they will never be able to extinguish the Spirit of God. That won't happen. Verses 9 through 11. We do not see our signs. There is no longer any prophet, nor is there any among us who knows how long. All these signs that we used to see, where we would see God doing these miraculous things, I'm not seeing them anymore. And there's no more prophet. The words of truth, I'm not hearing them anymore. There are so many people out there with words, but not the truth. And nobody knows how long this is going to last. When is things going to change for the better? And there is this huge fault in Christians. As soon as we elect a better president, everything will turn around. As soon as we get better leadership, everything will be so much better. That's what we're looking for. We'll stop looking for that, because that doesn't solve the problem. It is not until the hearts of people are changed that things will turn around. So how long, oh God, will the adversary's revival, or it actually means to criticize, I can't even say the word, and the enemy spurn your name forever? Why do you withdraw your hand, even your right hand, from within your bosom? Destroy them. Now that sounds like pretty strong language there. The psalmist is coming before God, and we can do the same. This is a perfectly legitimate prayer. How long are you going to, Lord, going to allow people to criticize your people and you yourself? To spurn your name, the name of Almighty God. How long is this going to happen? And then withdraw your right hand from within your bosom. Now, bosom is what is translated here in ours, and in most translations, it's in the folds of the garment is the actual word. And that actually is a better translation. Because what that really means is the psalmist is going before God and saying, how long, Lord, are you going to just silently stand there, get your hands out of your pockets and do something? That's what he's saying. That's what that means. Do something, Lord. Destroy them for your sake. Verses 12 through 15. Now this is the turning point in the psalm. And you see the turning point because it's turning from the eyes of sight to the eyes of faith. Huge difference. Huge difference the ways to look at things in this world. See, we look at things with our eyes and we see. If we would look at things through faith, we would see much different. So now this is what the psalmist is saying. Yet God is my king from of old, who works deeds of deliverance in the midst of the earth, who divided the sea by your strength. You broke the heads of the sea monsters in the water. You crushed the heads of the Leviathan. You gave him as food to the creatures of the wilderness. You broke open springs and torrents. You dried up ever-flowing streams. Now, if we look back through that, it says, who works deeds. You divided, you broke, you crushed, you gave, you broke, you dried. In other words, God, in the past, we know about all your mighty works that you have done. And we trust that that's what is going to happen today. It is your mighty works that will save us. I see these things that make no sense to me, all this evil and destruction that's going on, but in turn, I know that you are there. Even though I'm not hearing from you, I can look back and I can see what you have done, and you're the same God today. Why? Verse 16 and 17. Yours is the day, yours also is the night. You have prepared a light and the sun. You have established all the boundaries of the earth. You have made summer and winter. So now we're taking about all the wonderful things that God had done in the past. But at the same time, every day we are seeing his hand at work. We see the day. We see the night. Every day. God's hand is at work causing this to happen. Because you prepared, you created the sun for light. And you have established the boundaries of the earth. The seashores, there's a boundary there. You established it. Because you had said the water can go this far and no further. We can see that today. And you have made summer and winter. And we see the seasons every year. We see your hand at work. Verse 18 and 19. Remember this, O Lord, that the enemy has reviled, and foolish people have spurned your name. Do not deliver the soul of your turtle dove to a wild beast. Do not forget the life of the afflicted forever. Now he's calling on God to remember. Remember the enemy. The foolish people, they spurned your name. Now the turtle dove is us. See, the turtle dove also was part of the sacrificial system in the Old Testament. Because this is either a dove or a turtle or a young pigeon or a turtle dove as part of the sacrifice for the poor. So do not deliver the soul of your turtle dove, or do not deliver the soul of your poor to the wild beast, to the world. Protect those innocent, weak ones. Because it's us. We are innocent because of Christ. We are weak because in ourselves we have nothing to offer. But if God is for us, nobody's against us. Can't be. So do not forget the life of your afflicted forever. I'm going to be afflicted. Things are going to happen in my life. but not forever. Why? Because you are still God. How do we know this? Verses 20-21. Consider the covenant. For the dark places of the land are full of the habitations of violence. Let not the oppressed return dishonored. Let the afflicted and needy praise your name. The covenant, that's a huge importance because we have the Old Testament covenant and the New Testament covenant. And we live in the New Testament covenant time. Now, it wasn't two covenants. This quite often people get confused, like this was the way it was then, and this is the way it is now. No, it always was the same covenant. The difference is we now have a greater understanding of that covenant. And I look at it from the perspective of you fill out a will shortly after you got married, and you fill out a will after your kids are all grown, your grandkids are grown up. It's the same will, but there's a whole lot more information in there. So you have the old will and the new will. We have the old covenant, we have the new covenant. It's not a different covenant. It's the same promises, just lots more information. Because look in Hebrews 9:15. For this reason, he, that's Jesus, is the mediator of a new covenant, so that, since a death has taken place for the remission of the transgressions that were committed under the first covenant, those who have been called may receive the promise of the eternal inheritance. See, because of what Jesus had done, and those that were under the old covenant, they also receive that same benefit in the new covenant, eternal inheritance, or eternal life, everlasting life with God. Verse 22-23, arise, O God, and plead your own cause. Now that almost sounds like, God, plead your own cause, defend yourself, or say this, but no, it's really saying, all of these things are for your glory, Lord. That's what I'm after. That's what's important, is your glory. Remember how the foolish man reproaches you all day long. Do not forget the voice of your adversaries, the uproar of those who rise against you, which ascends continually. All of these things will come to an end for your glory, Lord. So I'm not asking you to save me out of all the troubles. I'm asking that your glory be magnified. That's what's important. That throughout all of these things, and when we be able to get to that point to where we see the truth, the real truth, we will see that God's glory is just magnified above all else. Interesting verse in Jeremiah 8, verse 7. Even the stork in the sky knows her seasons, and the turtle dove, and the swift, and the thrush observe the time of their migration. But my people do not know the ordinances of the Lord. See, even the dumb animals understand that there is a system in place. The people of God need to trust God. The people of God need to follow him and not worry themselves and concern themselves over the difficulties in life, because all of these things are part of God's plan, and they're all for his glory. If we're looking for our own glory and our own safety, we're looking for the wrong thing. We're looking for the glory of our God. That's what we're pursuing. That's what we should be pursuing. Because everything may be wrong, but when I listen to the Spirit instead of my head, God is not silent. He's speaking all the time. I just need to know how to listen.